Salam, Namaste, Vanakkam, Sanbonani, Molweni, and welcome to this Sunday's edition of The People's Voice with your host, SHABNAM, MOHAMED, producing The People's Voice for Salaamedia, a humanitarian journalism platform and portal. We're broadcasting live from Tegwini, Durban in KZN, and we have a critical show lined up for you today. We've just come out of Youth Month, but we never forget the best interests of children, who are the most important members of society. We're talking about why co-parenting is healthy for children and adults. And in the second half of the show, we'll be talking about mediation versus litigation in child access matters. I want to be sure that you're tuned in so you can comment, ask our guests questions, and of course, share your ideas. And here's how we do it. You can watch the show via the Salaamedia Facebook page live. You can listen live via the Salaamedia website, or you can watch the show on Salaamedia's YouTube. You could also listen live on the Salaamedia or TuneIn app and all free-to-air decoders. But what I'm going to do before we begin is start a watch party from the Salaamedia page. And if my guests or audience want to do the same, you're welcome to do that. You go to the Salaamedia Facebook page and you locate the video that's just started now. And you share that to your page on Facebook, on your personal profile, on a group, or on a page. And there we go. That video is now shared to my personal profile. But in order for me to run it as a watch party, I go to my profile and I enter the video, click on the video, and you can watch the show working, and just go share and start a watch party. Join us. And the watch party begins. It's really as simple as that. But the interactivity is what we really value and need. I see we've got 14 people already watching us on the Facebook Live. Very important conversation. We're talking to, in the first half of the show, Shazia, Mansoor, and Nazia, Iram, Osman. And in the second half of the show, we're talking to Sanlisiwe, Nyasulu, and Sheena, Jonker. So let's get straight into it. Sadiq, you can bring our first two guests, Shazia and Nazia, into studio so we can have this conversation. Let me introduce them. And our topic, of course, is why co-parenting is healthy for children and for adults. So Shazia Mansoor is an academic admin manager and mother to two beautiful boys. And in her own quote, co-parenting means the best interests of children are valued. And our second guest is Nazia Iram Osman. She's a clinical psychologist and mental health advocate. And in her own quote, I have a mindfulness and family perspective with adults and children. Shazia and Nazia, welcome to The People's Voice.
Thank you so much for having us, SHABNAM. And I feel sorry for you because you got a Shazia and a Nazia. So good luck with that.
I don't know how it turned out the way, but it sounds like poetry to me. So we're already off to a great start. Let's start with Shazia. Shazia, what made you decide to co-parent? I know you've got two lovely boys. You're co-parenting. I've been watching your journey unfold on social media, and it's such a beautiful example. So is it rooted in your own emotional health and your maturity? And is it also, about your children and what you want for them out of their lives?
Okay, hi SHABNAM. I think for me, my co-parenting journey started from, I think I saw my eldest son when I got divorced. Obviously, we look at our kids in terms of whatever decisions we want to make. And I noticed that my son was getting a lot of panic attacks. He wasn't his usual self. He was looking for male attention. He kept looking at the male figures in my family and seeking it. And that's when I realized that he was actually looking for more attention from his dad. And this was something that he picked up as well. And it was a decision that we both decided that maybe it was time that the boys spend more time with their dad, because that's exactly what they needed. Why look for a male figure when they actually do have a dad that wants to be in their lives? And this was actually the starting point from us. And when we looked at what our children needed and we put their interest first, it made it easier to work together towards a common goal.
100%. But what is it like? What is co-parenting like for your kids? What's the experience like?
For them, it's kind of like a holiday. They have two homes where they are loved. They have two families that are loved. We always ensure that there's positive vibes in both homes. So when the kids are leaving my home to go to their dad, it's something that I get them psyched up. Oh, daddy's going to do this with you. And he's so excited. You guys are going to play with your dogs. And he does the same when they're coming to me. When they're returning to me, he does the same. Mommy's got this lined up for you. And it just makes the transition so much easier between them. So they kids, they're 5 and 3.5. Their names are Sahal and Suhail. And I think Sahal is enjoying normality because he was accustomed to it. Suhail was 6 months when we parted. So for Suhail, separation is actually normal to him. But to see common aspects in both homes is what's important. So they actually have adjusted very good to it.
And I'm
for
sure
me,
Nazia is going to give us her perspective on how wonderfully it's going. And we see those lovely social media videos as well. They're absolutely beautiful. Shazia, what impact do you think co-parenting is having on your children? What have you observed?
I have observed that they've been happier. They've been more stable. I think our mentality is always going to be that kids will not adjust easily to different homes, different mindsets, different ways of doing things, but they actually shock us. I think it was a bitter pill for me to swallow. I struggle. I still struggle every time they have to leave or when I'm alone. But when you see the joys that they receive from both homes, I think it just makes the task easier for both parents.
That's wonderful. And Shazia, how do you deal with challenges? Because certainly it's not easy. You're two different people living two different lives. You have two different schedules, right? Different ways of doing things. Okay. So how do you deal with the challenges, especially under lockdown? How's it going?
I think the lockdown has actually brought the term co-parenting for us a bit easier. For me, it was their dad had actually approached to say that it's COVID, and we do have a court order in place in terms of times, etc. However, it was an appeal based on our kids' reaction that they should spend more time with their dad. At first, it was hard for me to agree to because, I mean, like any mom, I'm a bit OCD and you pedantic about routine and structure. And but when we did try it, I was open to trying it. We tried it for 1 week and we spoke about what challenges we faced. I spoke about things I wasn't happy with. He spoke about what he liked and didn't like. And we said, if this is going to work during, especially during this pandemic, this is the structure that we were going to put in place. And we accepted it. And so far, so good. Yes, it's a struggle. I mean, which family doesn't have it? But as long as the kids don't see the struggle and they see the positive aspects from it, I think that's what we work towards.
I want to ask you one last question before we turn to Nazia and give her the mic for a bit. Do people find it strange that you co-parent? I mean, I spoke to you, had a pre-interview conversation with you yesterday, and I was so thoroughly proud and impressed to hear your attitude to this, because you said, we're good parents and we love our children, and that's what matters despite whatever's happened in the past. And I think all couples need to have that approach. Whatever's happened has happened, but we're good parents and we love our kids. But do other people find it strange that you co-parent? How do they react?
I think I'm very active on social media. So I guess I get a lot of comments from parents and from single dads and from single moms in terms of the ways I do things. I'm known to be very different in my thinking, very liberal. I know recently I put up a post where my kids wanted to do a Father's Day card, and I helped them do it. And I put a post about it, and I had a lot of people had messaged me saying, Shazia, why would you do this? And for me, I'm raising 2 little boys, and I want them to realize that there is something such as love. There is such days as Father's Day. And I want them to grow up to be men that are going to respect women and that they're going to follow suit. And this is something that is my thinking. And their dad was extremely happy with the gesture. And I think in the end, it's what we want for our kids and not what society deems right. It's what we want to work towards.
Absolutely agree with you. We've got a comment here from the Practitioner's Guide to Medical Law and Ethics. And they say, thanks, guys, for a wonderful approach to an important topic. Well done. Will the video be available for viewing as a recording so I can refer interested persons? Yes, absolutely. The video will be available on the Salaamedia YouTube as well as the Facebook and the audio on the website. Fantastic support there. So Nazia, let's turn the mic to you. You've got a very interesting role in this whole process of helping couples co-parent in a healthy way. You're a clinical psychologist. What is the role of a clinical psychologist with regards to a separated couple or a divorced marriage partners and children? What is your role?
Okay, so I think that's a very important question and a good one to bring up because many people don't know that there's two roles a psychologist can be brought in, and it's very important that these roles be kept separate. So the one is for forensic purposes, we call it. So anytime that we get called to court or there's legal implications, or even if our report is going to court, we ask to comment as expert witnesses on what would be best for the child, especially if parents can't decide that, or if someone else, maybe a third party, is questioning that. And that is a very separate role. There's not too much of confidentiality, not everything that the child says, but some of it will be taken and shared. The second role, and that's what I'm quite passionate about, is the therapeutic role. So the first one is for litigation, but the second one is more mediation.
Right.
So the therapeutic role is, where we create a safe space for the child, or even the parents. They have confidentiality in place, and we just help with the transition of whatever is going on. Because when adults, we humans, but sometimes we forget that we are the ones responsible for what's going on. And sometimes, we intervene at many spots. Sometimes the parents need the help. Maybe one partner is still in love with the other partner. Maybe one is finding it more challenging. Maybe the other one's not taking responsibility, or sometimes the children come in and they're struggling. So we can intervene at many levels. And as I told you, I'm a family therapist. I don't mind bringing all three in and saying, hey, if this is the way you're behaving here, I wonder what's going on at home.
Right.
So, so the two roles must not be mistaken. Lots of people, and I'm sad to say this, they come in saying, I want what's best for the child. I'm coming in for therapy. And the next thing they want to use it is ammo against other parents. They want to manipulate. And this is really, really sad, guys. So you must remember it's two different roles. And it's, it's really sad when we use the children as ammunition against each other.
And you would have to be really sharp, as in your role as a psychologist, to figure out when the parties are being manipulative, when there's narcissistic personalities involved, where children are being used as a weapon to hurt the other party, and where children are being brainwashed and coached to actually reject the other party. But we'll get to that in a sec. What are the psychological benefits of co-parenting for children and parents, Nazia?
Okay, so I think, look, I'm so glad to hear that Shazia is doing so well with the co-parenting. I think co-parenting is really, really important. It's the ideal situation, but it's also how you co-parent. Because I see some of the parents who are saying, oh, we co-parenting, but the way it's done, there's so much of conflict, there's so much of aggression. So I think it's how it's done also that really, really matters. And, good news for parents is that it doesn't mean if you're getting divorced, the child needs to be traumatized. There are many factors that come into play. I mean, how you as parents respect each other or deal with each other, how your parenting skills are, if you're consistent or similar in terms of how you were before and after. There's not too many major changes. So if it must be done correctly. But in terms of the benefits of co-parenting, I think the big thing is children would feel secure in the fact that my parents still love me enough to put their hurt and pain aside.
Right.
So I think divorce is, as much as we're afraid of it, seeing a mother being beaten up or seeing parents miserable and children blaming themselves for that situation is a huge burden on those little shoulders. So if you're apart and you're happy and you're respectful towards each other, it shows the child that I matter. It's not my fault. I don't have to be the adult here. I'm cared for. I'm loved.
Absolutely.
And those are very, very, important, simple messages, but, absolutely critical.
And develop
and then taking
children who become healthy adults. Nazia, how are children affected by a refusal to co-parent? Because parental alienation is a form of emotional and psychological abuse, and it has severe impact on a child growing up and manifests when they're adults. But you're better placed to tell us about this. How are children affected, whether they're showing it or they're hiding it, by a refusal to co-parent?
Okay, so I think, look, as much as co-parenting works, if it's enforced, just say by the law, and the parent doesn't want to do it, that also has a negative ripple, like it has a ripple effect, negative repercussions. But just imagine if someone says your dad doesn't want to see you every week, or your mom doesn't want, what effect would that have? Wouldn't we look at it as rejection? Wouldn't we say, well, it must be something wrong with me then that this parent doesn't want to come? Maybe it's my fault. So I think rejection is the big one. It depends on the attachment also that child had to that parental figure that now is, doesn't want to play a part. If it was a very important attachment, it would have dire repercussions. Even the ability to trust, simple ability to trust and know that relationships are a safe space. And as simple as that sounds, lots of people choose not to marry later on, or not to enter relationships or play games even, just to ensure that they are safe. So it has a ripple effect down, in the ability to have relationships even further on.
And then further on, issues of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, substance abuse, violent behavior, all of that manifests. Even inability to perform, in a healthy way at school is affected because I don't know where I stand. I'm being told my other parent doesn't love me, and more often than not, it's actually not the case. It's just that alienation is happening, and there is this refusal. Before we go to break, one question, Nazia, how is a parent affected, the alienated parent affected by a refusal to co-parent? What does this parent go through, and how does one address this emotional pain that they're going through?
Okay, so I think the alienated parent, if co-parenting is happening right, the parent should feel that they're supported, that they get a break. So if co-parenting is not happening and one parent is held responsible, it's shown that the one parent can become depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, overburdened, stressed, frazzled, maybe sometimes even aggressive on the child, resentful towards the child. So there's lots of repercussions, and a depressed mom or a depressed dad that's doing the parenting, can you imagine the repercussions of that on the child? So parenting, the parent that is in charge will definitely not be given the benefit of the doubt. They definitely will suffer repercussions because they now have to play many roles. They have to be the nurturer, the provider, the disciplinarian, and if you're wearing many hats or playing multiple roles, each takes something off you, and unfortunately, you can't be 100% on all, and it affects even the relationship that you have with your child.
And if you co-parent, you have some time for yourself, which is healthy. That's really important to be a good parent. Okay, we're going to take a quick ad break. And when we come back, we'll continue the conversation on healthy co-parenting for children and adults on The People's Voice. We'll be right back.
COVID-19 has been declared a global pandemic, and South Africa has called a national lockdown to curb its spread. At this difficult time, the Al-Imdad Foundation is assisting informal traders who lose their livelihoods, the homeless, the elderly, and those who are most vulnerable in South Africa and internationally. Let's fight this crisis together. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Osman's Taj Mahal Spice and Rice. For over 80 years, Osman's Taj Mahal have been perfecting the art of the perfect blend of spices, pure, aromatic, and well-seasoned. Spices to tantalize your taste buds. From creative cuisines to gastronomical gourmet goodies. From exotic odors to traditional dishes, Osman's Taj Mahal have remained synonymous with quality spices and condiments. Taj Mahal rice, beans, and lentils. Try our range of chili bite mixes, rose and ilachi syrup, our quick and easy biryani pack, and our traditional range of spice blends. Osman's Taj Mahal. There is no substitute for quality.
Never before has humanity faced a pandemic like the COVID-19 virus.
The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus outbreak as a global pandemic.
Penny Appeal believes in prevention being the cure, and we remain firm in standing by our commitment to support and help those in need.
Because the border have closed, so I'm very, very affected. So
they are lacking in the supplies.
I hope government can find a solution.
Our response is to provide hardship grants to those experiencing a loss in income in the months to come, and hygiene kits for the vulnerable at home here in South Africa and Syria and Palestine. Show compassion in the midst of crisis. Donate to our coronavirus emergency appeal now. Be proactive. Be aware. Help save a life. Donate today. Call 031 11 00 573 or donate via www.pennyappeal.org.za. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
And we're back here with the People's Voice and SHABNAM PALESA MOHAMED for Salaamedia, and we're talking about why co-parenting is healthy for healthy children and healthy parents. And we're in conversation with Shazia, Mansoor and Nazia, Iram, Osman, and they will be on camera with us in a sec to continue this conversation. We've got a watch party comment from Kiran Danraj, and he says, the best thing that happened was that my parents got divorced. And in my conversation and in my work with couples and children, it's often a commonly reflected feeling. They needed to get divorced. There was too much fighting. They were not compatible with each other. And we felt like they stayed together because of us, when actually we wanted them to be two separate, happy parents. And that's certainly a very, very important perspective. Nazia, before we go back to Shazia, I want to ask you this. What psychological traits is an alienating party, so the alienator, displaying that is harmful to a child and to children? And what kind of intervention do they need? What kind of therapy do they need so that they can rid themselves of this way of thinking and this behavior and live a happier and healthier life?
Okay. So I have to confess, I was dreading this question because it's such a complex one.
I can't hear you, Nazia.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I said I have to confess, I was dreading this question if it was going to come up, because it's quite a complex one. And you know, many parents want us to diagnose another parent while they're not in the room. And you know, we dread that very, very carefully. Many titles like narcissist, bipolar, substance use, you know, antisocial personality disorders float around. And some people do have those traits, I'm not denying it, but a lot of people don't. So what I would first do is I would try to understand what is the reasoning behind it. Why are you refusing to co-parent? Do you understand what co-parenting means? Do you understand you don't have to do all the work? It doesn't have to be all the time. It's just that you're playing a bigger part. Do you get the definition of co-parenting? So, and then understand, what is it? What are the barriers? Because some people, you know, I don't know, some cultures say that females are in charge of children. Why should I intervene? Am I not providing? Or maybe they're paying maintenance. They think, so, you know, discussing it with them, understanding their behavior, sometimes letting them know, if you don't, this is what's going to happen. And then if you do, these are the benefits. So we can set the kind of, you know, context, give them all the information, let them know how the child is feeling by them rejecting, let them know the research, and, you know, hopefully that gets them to, you know, play a larger role or play a bigger part. I think also what they were like before. Were they playing a part in the child's life? Did they even, you know, were they full-time, just say if I say fathers, were they there? So I think what they were before has a huge impact on what role they play now.
That's, of course, unless, you know, one or both parents was being separated from the child, deliberately being kept out of the child's life, which then makes it difficult. And of course, you would need reunification therapy, etc., to bring the children and the alienated parents back together. And sometimes it can be quite a process, you know, but it's just something that's entirely avoidable. I want to come back to you, Shazia. What advice do you have for parents who have children and are separating or divorcing? What's your advice to them, given your new perspective on co-parenting?
I think I would want to say that the journey ahead is not going to be easy. It's a struggle. It really is. But I think if you put your kids' needs first, if you listen to what they want, you'll save a lot of money and time. The key concept between two parents that are separating is mediation and communication. And if you can be liberal in thinking in terms of the role that person plays in your child's life, it doesn't make the process any easier. It just makes it more bearable, especially on the children.
Especially on the children. And that's the key point. Same question for you, Nazia. What advice do you have for parents who are separating, or couples that are separating, or a married couple that's divorcing where there are children involved? What's your advice to them?
Okay, so I think Shazia is, a brilliant example at this, that the words that she used, mediation and communication. Divorce doesn't have to be this terrible thing that will spoil their life forever. It's just how us as parents, handle that, and remember that we are the adults. We had choices in this. The children didn't. If we take on our responsible roles, the children can be children. So I think just be responsible, know that it's your choice. The child didn't have a choice. And, I think the best thing a parent can give their child is to be at peace with themselves and be respectful to their ex-partner. So I think if you can just do this amicably and keep an open communication and keep the best interest of the child, as sometimes it's unnatural or difficult as that is, if you can keep the best interest of the child at heart and keep repeating that, as often as you can, I think you're on a good stead.
Absolutely agree. And then my last question for you, Shazia, what is your advice to parents who refuse to co-parent until they have to face the court? What is your advice to them?
I think my advice would be, it's a bitter pill to swallow. It really is, but it's the most satisfying pill in the long run. And I think for me as a parent, I was that person who was very adamant at first not to. But I think when you look in the long run, I don't want my kids I always have this fear that my kids are going to turn around and ask me, why didn't my marriage work? Why didn't I fight to save my marriage? And that's the biggest fear for any parent. But I know now with confidence, if I take this route, and if you try this route, your children will look back and they'll respect you more because they know you tried. But more importantly, you never put a block between them and the other parent. And I think that for me has been the stepping stone. And if you try it, you will see the positive outcomes in the long run.
100%. We've got a comment from Sunny Morgan. He says, this is such a valuable discussion. In our background, the needs of the child is often overlooked. Thank you, SHABNAM, PALESA, Mohammed. Thank you, Sunny. And thank you to my two brilliant guests. Same question for you, Nazia. What is your advice for parents who just refuse to co-parent to the detriment of the child or the children?
Okay, so I think, as I said, parents are the adults here. You're supposed to keep your child's best interest at heart. And sometimes that's easier said than done. Emotions can run very, very high. And when emotions get in the way, somehow, we don't behave at our best, especially if we are triggered or we're blaming the other partner. So I think the huge one is to separate our feelings from that of the child. And maybe he or she was not the best spouse, but it doesn't mean that they still can't be a good enough parent. So if, whether it means going for therapy yourself, whether it means speaking to someone, whether it means taking a break, whatever it is, find a way to cope and separate your feelings from that of the child. It doesn't mean if they were not a good spouse that they won't be a good parent. So I think that separation is very, very important. And the other thing, if you just keep in mind, I want to give my child the best chance at being a good, holistic, caring person. Because we're so focused on school and all the rest of it, but what about a good human being, a trusting, loving person? And the best way we can do this is by modeling that behavior. So if we can trust them or trust our ex-spouse, we're giving them that best chance. So, please, guys, I think give your child that chance to be that good, holistic person.
Absolutely. A good holistic person who then doesn't need to, when they're older, look back at you and say, but you kept me away from my parent. I was pining for my parent all my life. Why did you do that? And then you damage that relationship. A comment from Rashida Khan. Thank you for this conversation. So much to consider. And a comment from Tesna Aston. At some point, those people loved each other. So they should bear in mind that children are as a result of that love. Children are so damaged when parents fight or badmouth each other. And we've got a wave from Muhammad Rashid Qazi. And a question from Mushtaq Sheikh that's more legal inclined. So I'm going to hold that one for the second half of the show. And in the last 30 seconds, I'm going to turn the mic back to Shazia. And I'm going to ask you to do a message to your two boys, Sahal and Suhail.
Okay. Shama, you put me on the spot for this one.
I love you, which is great as well.
Okay, to my darling two little men, you mean the world to me. And I never knew that 3 years later, I'd be sitting here proudly saying that this journey has been, the past 3 years has been positive. Thank you. And I hope that one day you will look back and remember that your mom and dad put you first. Love you.
Absolutely. How beautiful is that? I'm also feeling very emotional. I think it's beautiful. Razia Sultan says, well said, sisters Shazia and Nazia. Never give up. Travel your journey to the end of the road with hope and faith in the Almighty and in yourself. And that's it for the first half of the show, why co-parenting is healthy for children and adults. Thank you very much to our two guests, Shazia Mansoor and Nazia Iram Osman, for spending time with us today on The People's Voice.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, that's the first half of the show already done on The People's Voice, and I think it's been absolutely brilliant. I'm tempted to say we should go for an ad break because we're halfway through, but we seem to have had a technical glitch earlier on, and I don't really want to lose the audience that we have that are really enjoying this evening's show, and I think it's such an important one. So, Sadiq, you'll have to let me know whether the glitch has been fixed. But in the meantime, we'll move on to the second half of our show this evening, and we're talking about mediation versus litigation in child access matters. And I'd like to welcome Sanali Siwe, Nyasulu, and Sheena Jonker into studio so I can tell you more about these brilliant women. You know, there is this theory that women refuse to co-parent and women are so antagonistic to the idea of mediating. And here we are tonight proving all of that wrong. And I think it's fantastic. Sanali Siwe and Sheena, welcome to The People's Voice.
Thank you so much,
Thank you very
SHABNAM.
much.
Wonderful to have
Thank
you
you for
on.
having
So,
us.
Nyasulu is a lawyer who's leading the pro bono department at Garlic in Bousfield. And in her words, mediation is important because it is voluntary. Parties are able to reach a resolution that is suitable for all. Sheena Jonker is a mediator, an arbitrator, a restorative justice lawyer, and a teacher at Alternative Dispute Resolution Network South Africa and Access to Justice, which is a non-profit organization. Well, let's get straight into it. Sada Govender says, excellent topic. Wonderful to have you on. Of course, Sada Govender from Capital Radio. And then, of course, we have a comment from Mushtaq Sheikh coming up a little further on in the conversation. Sanali Siwe, what is the role of an attorney in matters involving separating couples who have children? And what is the process that's undertaken?
Okay. It depends. It depends on whether or not that separation is already in a commencement of a divorce or whether the divorce itself has not been instituted. Because as we all can imagine, it's not always that when people separate that a divorce follows. But should couples be separating, one of them or either both of them could come to an attorney and say, we are separating, and maybe whoever's going to be whoever's going to have the care of the children might want maybe some sort of support while they are separated. So then they could come to an attorney to ask for help from an attorney to assist them to claim for financial support from the other parent. Of course, if whether or not the divorce proceedings have started, there is the Rule 43 of the High Court Act. High Court rules, sorry, of the High Court rules that we can use to actually assist them to claim for either maintenance or payment of school fees. I'm so sorry about the light behind me. Or else we can use Rule 58 of the Magistrate Court rules, which also seeks to achieve the same purpose. But that's what we would normally assist with. Shabna?
Can you please fix that?
Shabna?
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, Shabna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly fine. What's the role of an attorney in respect? Okay, let's move on from there. You've trained as a mediator with the ADR Network South Africa. How does this change your thinking? Because when one is trained as a litigator, and it's very adversarial, it's us versus them, it's win at all costs, it's show them a point and teach them a lesson. And mediation is completely different. It's a peace building, it's a solution finding, it's a facilitation role. So how did training with the ADR Network South Africa change your thinking, Sanlisiwe?
Well, it completely changed my thinking because, for starters, I have always, when we're litigating, it's all about your client. And whether it's a divorce matter or it's parents that are separating, the client is not the children. Your client is the mom or the dad, and it's what they want. So you are looking out for the best interest, mainly of the mom or the dad, whom are your clients. So most of the time, then the children will get lost in that process of whatever it is that your clients want, which might not always be in the best interest of their children. But when it comes to mediation, the process is all about the two parties that have to actually not look at what is best for them, but what is best for their children. And who best knows what is best for their children but the parents? So that process being voluntary between the two parents, that process being a process where they use the best tools, they use the information that they know about themselves and their lifestyles and their beliefs. They use all of that in trying to come up with the best solution as to how they are going to co-parent. Whereas if you go to court, it's all one-sided. It's about who's going to win, who's going to get the best outcome. Whereas here, it's not about the best outcome of the individuals. It's about the best outcome for everyone involved in that process.
Can you unmute my mic, please, Sadik? We've got a comment from Rajendran Tangavelu Governor. He says, great program, very informative, and he's a social cohesion advocate as well. Fesna Aston had a comment just before that. Thank you for this conversation, Shabnam. It needs to be had. Absolutely agree. And then I want to come to Fesna's question in a second. But before we do that, I want to turn the mic over to Sheena. Sheena, how does the role of a mediator compare to that of a litigator, and what's the process involved in mediation?
So Sanlisiwe has made a lot of good points, and she's juxtaposed the role of the attorney as being there for the client. In other words, either defending or attacking one position from that client's vantage point, as opposed to the mediator's role, who is meant to see the whole system, and particularly mediation rooted in restorative justice, which is a whole systems approach, looks at the conflict rooted in the particular circumstances of the conflict and looks to reformulate a system post-divorce that's going to serve everyone, with, of course, the child's best interests or the children's best interests centered in the process. It's hardly ever in the best interest of the children to be at the center of an adversarial process between their parents and court. That is just so destructive on so many levels. Psychologically, you're also putting the family through very real economic hardship. Parents' minds are taken up with the stress of the process. So it's hardly ever. In fact, I can't think of any instance where children being at the center of a litigated process, which is adversarial, is in their best interests. So yeah.
You've got about at least 10 years with ADR Network SA, apart from your general legal career. But in terms of the ADR Network South Africa, can you share with us its services and also some of the successes that you've seen over the years?
Well, we train mediators in almost every area, from commercial to divorce to labor to criminal mediation and restorative justice, personal injury, and I think the main successes have been in unique areas, in that because our mediation training and our mediation practice is rooted in restorative justice, we've managed to do some groundbreaking work in very high conflict situations where there might be violence involved, which is not really for classic mediation, but we've managed to locate the parties well in a restorative justice process with a mediation stance. So we've had a lot of success in domestic violence matters, divorces that include sexual violence, where they're separating parties where there has been a history of violence or alcohol abuse or substance abuse. So the very, very high conflict matters we've had a lot of success in. We've had a lot of success in mediating personal injury matters, specifically in sexual violence and gender-based violence matters. And then through Access to Justice, which is an NPO, we do a lot of dispute resolution on behalf of vulnerable individuals and communities. And we've had a lot of successes in diverting matters from the courts to dialogue in shack dweller evictions. I would say safely that we've positively affected about 8,000 families in the last 5 to 6 years, where in one matter, the High Court in the Western Cape actually ordered that the land that a community of 5,000 was settled on was actually purchased by the local authority from the private landowners. So mediation, we've used it in human rights matters, and we've used it in vulnerable persons matters. And I think that's really been the success, if I can say, the unique success of ADR Network SA has been venturing into territory that people typically, or mediators typically, or ADR practitioners typically have not ventured into before. And we're very proud of that. And I must say, it would not have been possible without the help of a handful of mediators and lawyers that have contributed their time and resources and their skills to that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
A beautiful picture you've just painted for us there. I've got a comment or a question from Thesna Aston. Do your guests find that parental alienation syndrome is common in this country? And is it brought before the court or the mediator, or is it simply ignored? Can I turn that one to Sanlesiwe?
I'm not going to lie to you, Shabnam. I haven't come across many cases that involved parental alienation. It's not to say that it's not out there, but I think it's the clients that come through either through us as Garlic and Bowsfield, or that come through even through the pro bono department, we don't see a lot of those cases that are coming through that need our attention or assistance. We don't see much of that. Obviously, in the African community, parental alienation is something that is prevalent as a result of other social ills that almost make it a norm sometimes, that dads are absent in family structures, or sometimes moms, for whatever reason, they might leave the children with their grandparents or their relatives. So, but those are not, they haven't been issues that we have particularly dealt with.
Understood. So we've got another question here from Mushtaq Sheikh, and I've been wanting to come to this one. It's a little bit complex, so you can make notes as you go. And he's got two questions. Number one, the current legal processes are either too costly and time-consuming to pursue, or too corrupt and skewed in the favor of one gender or the wealthiest parent. Is our justice system simply paying lip service to a child's right to have contact with both parents? We have family courts, we have children's courts, we have maintenance courts, we have a family advocate's office that are often of no real benefit to children. And this is not an understatement. Surely it's time for us to push for a total review of the system and focus it on the child. And the second question is, so that one's about a total review of the system. And the second one is, what advice would you give to a father who's been denied access and contact to his child by the mother of the child that he is divorced from for the past 5 years plus? Who wants to go first?
Shabnam, can I just make a few comments? First of all, I think what Sane talks about structural alienation of parents from children is a very necessary conversation, and migrant labor systems still exist today, and we need to have a conversation about that at some stage, and the extent to which parents are still alienated from their children. So I think that's a vital conversation. In terms of the costly legal processes,
what we're saying is, in that instance, it's not deliberate. It's not, I don't want my child. It's a structural inequality.
It's structural. Absolutely. I deal with a lot of parental alienation matters, and let me address what the gentleman has just asked about how the legal system is structured. First of all, I'm a law reformist at heart, even an abolitionist to a certain extent, because I think that some of the processes, the rights-based and power-based processes, just need to be dismantled and replaced by other processes, which I think mediation and restorative justice is an emerging alternative, which has incredible potential. But just on that, the processes are costly. The Children's Court is a new specialized court, or relatively new specialized court. It's inquisitorial rather than adversarial. It's more user-friendly, but unfortunately, a lot of lawyers are bypassing the Children's Court when they shouldn't. And there's constitutional court case law to say that these matters should first go to the Children's Court, and they're not. And parties could actually go to the Children's Courts directly themselves and be guided through the whole process without expensive lawyers, and that's simply not happening. The other alternative, of course, and a much more economical alternative and a much more accessible alternative, speedy, is a mediator, but a good mediator. What would I recommend to a father who's been alienated from his children? Go and seek out a good mediator and see if they can help you set up some form of intervention. The thing about mediation right now as well, it's not beholden to the formal structures of the courts. So we've seen that through lockdown, ADR and mediation processes have been able to continue seamlessly and provide access to disputants to have very urgent matters resolved through mediation, where the courts might not see the urgency in the circumstances, but for a particular family, it might be a very urgent situation. Your previous guests have spoken about the various traumas that are involved in a family that's going through a divorce. So, and I also want to say that the counselors and the psychologists, alongside the process of divorce and family mediation, provide a service that is so necessary. And I think what a lot of lawyers and legal teams forget is that they're dealing with people in pain and that have gone through and are going through trauma. And the court is just simply not the best place to be dealing with these issues. A well-structured mediation process can really get the parties a lot further down the line.
Absolutely agree. I want to take a few comments before I want to turn it back to Sanlesiwe. Rashida Khan and Presna Aston are having a conversation, which is brilliant, in the Watch Party comments about parental alienation syndrome. And Rashida asked what that was, and Presna explained, and it seems that people do understand. She says where one parent badmouths the others so much that the children are alienated from that parent, often with allegations of abuse. And says Rashida, of course, understands that. Presna says, Rashida, it's actually so common. And Rashida says, yes, I've heard of many such cases. The children suffer the worst of it in the long term. So it's fantastic to see that, you know, in as sad as the situation is, people are aware of what's going on. Salisiwe, I want to ask you this question. You lead the pro bono division at Garlick and Bousfield. Now, given the psychological and economic impact of lockdown, and what I mean is people are losing their jobs, people are unemployed, they're taking pay cuts, etc., which then impacts on both parties' duty to maintain the child. And then, of course, this false perception that you got to pay to play. So if you don't pay the maintenance, you're not going to give you access. And of course, that's not actually how it works. You know, it's extremely cruel and unfair to the child that's involved. But given the economic devastation that we're facing, this is going to become a very, very big topic that lawyers alone are simply not going to be able to handle. And of course, we need the mediators. But are you expecting more of these cases to come your way in your pro bono department? And how would you address them?
Okay. You know, we are always expecting more. And as you said, with the situation that we've got in the country currently, you know, with parents and family units being forced to live with one another in such, you know, difficult times, there's always bound to be conflict that arises for various reasons, which would end up, you know, in a situation where assistance of a lawyer is needed to help out. So we are expecting. However, I must tell you that we have not seen many cases coming through, not as many as we would expect that we should be seeing. Now, I am not sure whether by virtue of the lockdown itself, people feel that maybe they can't venture out to go and find assistance. I'm not sure. But also, as Sheena has said, with the lockdown, even the courts themselves are closed. So where we would have help desks every Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, if not Wednesday, at the Durban Magistrates Court, doing family law matters there, we don't have those help desks open currently. So that on its own, I believe, has had an impact in the number of people that have come through for our help. We haven't seen as many, but it could be because we have not been able to reach out to the community as much as we would if it weren't for COVID-19.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm certainly expecting an explosion of these matters, though, given the economic devastation, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us, certainly.
Yes.
And a lot of people can't afford attorneys' fees because they can't. Economic devastation, so we've got to find another way, and I'm still saying it's mediation. Mohammed Ishrat Hassan said, lovely topic. A lot of parental alienation is out there in KZN. Now we're talking, well done. Education is key. And children are, you know, the products of both mom and dad and belong to both. Let's learn to not emotionally abuse the children. And he's mentioned a joint KZN child alienation group. And if you're following the Watch Party comments, you'll find his number there if you want to join the group. Sandisiwe, in the recent matter of Brownlee versus Brownlee, Judge Brassey focused on the duty to resolve a matter through mediation. And he also on the attorney's role to encourage mediation. Both attorneys were found wanting in that regard, meaning that they didn't encourage mediation because they wouldn't make as much money. And the litigants were also reprimanded for not being open to resolving the matter together and had to pay their own costs. What's the impact of cases like these in terms of a precedent in child access matters?
Okay. In fact, this case is quite old. I think it's a 2008 case, and the judgment came out in 2009. So it was a groundbreaking case, because it's also has been quoted, and there's articles that have been written even in England based on this case, because I think the judge, thought outside of the box and sought to instill something that was very, very different from what the courts have been doing all along, to insist that litigants must take some sort of means to try and mediate. So, however, even though this case was so clear, I believe that because it wasn't a constitutional court case, I don't think it has received as much attention, or I don't believe that it has, been seen to give precedent as much as it should have, as much as it should have. So, as you would know, when it comes to court cases, if a matter is decided in the High Court, that decision will impact on the lower courts. They have to use that decision. However, another High Court is not really expected to follow necessarily what the judge in the same level of court has decided. So we haven't seen as many people or as many judges actually sticking to this and also enforcing. Having said that, there's an estate matter, so it's a deceased estate matter. The name of this case is I think it's Mampisika. It's a 2017 case, and it's related to a contestation of a will. And in that case, the judge there also came down upon the litigants and said, you should have followed the precedent of this case and attempted to mediate this matter. So slowly but surely, I mean, the rules of the High Court have also, included the requirement of mediation. So we are seeing the courts so many years later, after the 2008 case, we are seeing the courts now moving closer to this mediation and the requirements, and seeing the value therein. So, which is very exciting.
Okay, we've got about 2 minutes to go, a whole flurry of comments to get through, and I think that's a very positive one. So I'm going to just see Farhana Kara Mutala. How binding are mediators' rulings or recommendations on the parties, Sheena?
Well, it's a matter of agreement, so it's binding in contract as a normal contract would be. So you have contractual remedies. Parties do sometimes go a step further and have the mediated agreements made in order of court, and of course in divorce proceedings, arrangements for children access support and the like are made orders of court. So it's very binding. But even without an order of court, your remedy is rooted in contract. The parties have come to an agreement, and that's protected by our law of contract.
All right, I'm trying to figure out the last couple of questions, which ones to run through very quickly. And I was going to ask Salaamedia about, why would you advise people to mediate? What's the benefits and the advantages? But I think it's very clear.
Yes.
And you have certainly enjoyed a level of success as you are a mediator as well, trained by the ADR Network South Africa.
Yes.
To say to people, if you want to avoid a Section 35 contempt of court order where you have to pay a fine or go to jail, so let's mediate this matter. Let's not make it more complicated.
Exactly.
Nawawi Matthew says, awesome show with much needed conversation to have great guests. Yes, I absolutely love my guests. And then I was going to ask Sheena, in your experience, what personality types are open to mediation and which ones are not. And I think to an extent, we have covered that during the course of the show. So I'm just going to end with this one. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds each. What is your advice to parties who are embarking on a relationship or a marriage and wanting to have children? Just what is your advice to them to avoid, the trauma, the costs, the length of time involved in this, etc.? Let's start with you, Nazia. What's your advice?
Shabnam, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was never ready for that one, and I don't even have an answer because I'm not a parent yet. I'm not a mom yet. So I don't even know what to say. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I'm guessing Sheena is going to go with have a contract in advance, but let's see what
I think it's a massive question, and I think that as a society we need to start having more peacemaking language in our day-to-day conversations. We need to have more collaborative language, more cooperative language, and let's face it, we have a very adversarial, competitive society, and it affects every single aspect of our life. So we need to stop competing with each other at every level and start seeing each other as co-partners in this life, whether it's your spouse or your children. All relationships are going to go through the patterns of going through difficulty. But the one thing that I can say is there is no easy divorce. And if you want to complicate the hell out of it, do it through the courts, because it's just it's mind-boggling how complicated it can become. So yeah, but when you're starting out on life's journey together, wow, 30 seconds. I think it takes a lifetime to really learn how to do that.
But I'm going to tell you what, we can continue the conversation in the comments on the watch party or on the live video. And of course, all of our guests are available on Facebook. I know our guests in the second half of the show as well, along with the Alternative Dispute Resolution Network South Africa. So I want to say a very, very warm thank you to Sanesiwe Nyasulu and Sheena Jonker for joining us today on The People's Voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Shabnam, and thanks to your listeners.
Okay.
Same here, Sheena. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Okay, well, that's been fantastic, constructive, important conversations. And because we've run out of time, I cannot deliver my message for this edition of The People's Voice. Except to say thank you to all of our guests, Shazia, Mansoor, Nazia, Iram, Osman, Sanesiwe Nyasulu, and Sheena Jonker, and of course, our fantastic listeners and viewers and our Salaamedia team. Until the next edition next week, Sunday, remember to ask yourself every day, what am I doing to make a difference in my country and my world? Revolutionary peace. Assalamu alaikum.